All right, so here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, this is a recorded interview with our client, Miss Cynthia B. And I want to start by saying thank you, Miss B, Cynthia, for giving us this interview at this time with your case to let others out there know the types of things that we are capable of developing with our client's case for the benefit of our client's case. All right. And in this interview with you for now, I want to discuss three key points of evidence that we have documented of this case and believe can benefit this case. And they are number one, when I attended the recent Zoom hearing with you, I later reported to you that I found clear evidence of the judge, Bernard J. Sarley, spelled Sarley, violating our client's right to due process. And number two, violating the laws of Article 4 of the United States Constitution, which, from my research from various dependable resources, describe this law in that it outlines the relationship between the various states, as well as the relationship between each state and the United States federal government. The law that I've read stated the full faith and credit clause requires states to extend full faith and credit to the public acts, records, and court proceedings of proceedings of other states. That's what it says. That's in the law book. I didn't come up with that. Here is a statement regarding this constitutional law made by constitutionallawreporter.com. The full faith and credit clause ensures that no matter the differences among state laws, those laws are still respected in other states. So I'm going to assume that's how most judicial professionals, scholars, they interpret it also. So that's what it says. Okay, so let's talk about number one, violation of due process of law. Okay, I have noted the statements made by this judge where after I fully stated to him live in that Zoom hearing and on that court record that I was a state licensed private investigator, which I am, and even read the state statute number that authorized me to legally investigate, to secure evidence and prepare that evidence for my client to be used in legal, civil, or criminal cases, and therefore was present to testify to that evidence that I was in part or whole responsible for its securing, that you, Miss Cynthia B., wanted to present to the court. Okay, do you remember me stating those things to the judge?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. All right, and do you remember the personnel of CPS then acting in opposition to my presence in the hearing,
Um, it,
where I believe it was CPS's legal counsel who also stated essentially
Em-
that I was not a party to the case and
yes.
therefore should not be present since it's a confidential case. You
Mm-hmm.
remember that?
That was Emily O'Brien. Yes.
Okay. And so would you agree that it looks like CPS is trying hard to pretend that they are perhaps they are only allowed to have their legal investigator or caseworker to be present in court to testify to evidence, even though those legal practitioners are also not parties to the case?
Right. I agree. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that amazing? Are those your beliefs also, and do you think that's fair?
No, I do not think it's fair. A lot of things that the judge himself has done within my case have been unfair, including trying to redefine what the meaning of hearsay is and stating medical documentation is hearsay as well.
Totally understand that. All right, thank you. And now let's talk about law and or rights violation number two that we have secured and prepared evidence for you as our client.
Mm-hmm.
All right, as I stated to the judge and at the same time in the court recording, in that court hearing, that I was a fully licensed and authorized by state law that regulated my license to be hired to legally investigate to secure evidence and of his
Mhm.
preparation for my client's civil or criminal case of any kind. The judge then subsequently, whether on his own decision and or in part or whole by the request of CPS's lawyer, he then ordered me to A, turn my investigative file over to your newly court-appointed attorney,
Right.
right?
And to
That
the court
was
as well.
that was
And
right that was literally appointed to you during that same hearing
right.
while I've been legally working with you on this case from September 15th, 2022 to the day of that hearing to be October 14th, 2022,
Right.
right? Which is essentially a month before this new attorney even started.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct. And I believe the prosecutor also tried to object as well. And Annette
Okay.
Thornton. Hmm?
And so do you, Miss Cynthia B, agree with and identify with these statements I'm making so far?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Um, and did I first still mention, did I first actually ask for your permission before emailing your new court-appointed attorney with the contents of your case file?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in your honest opinion, why do you believe that I asked for your permission first before obeying this unruly judge's order, namely to divulge your case file information with a third party? Why do you think I did that?
I think it was to also show that in that everything I had hired you to do was very legal, and you wanted to make sure you were being transparent as well, and also showing that you have my best interests by asking for my permission to release that information.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for knowing that, and that because my client comes first before anything I find that's going to be against my client unlawfully. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for knowing that. All right, and do you feel that I am more interested in protecting and helping my client to benefit with their case results, much more than I'm concerned with what consequences that may exist, if any, that I may face from disobeying an unruly judge's orders?
Yes, I do. I think they're used to trying scare tactics and taking advantage of people and trying to create fear so that it causes them to not want to call them out on all their wrongdoings and illegal actions.
Totally agree with you. All right, and I truly thank you for your honest opinion. Okay, and so the first violation that I found of this judge in violating Article 4 of the United States Constitution, the full faith and credit clause, is by this Judge Bernard J. Sarley, but I think they really meant to give him the last name Bernard J. Sorry.
Right.
But anyway, the judge made an order that literally would violate the state statutory laws that regulate my professional license,
Right.
which absolutely prohibit the unauthorized divulging of confidential case information to anyone whomsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So in our cases, we place every single person associated with our client's CPS case under our investigation, which absolutely also includes any attorney working for our client, be it court appointed or paid, for seeking evidence and case preparation against them for all sorts of possible law and or ethics violations, including but not limited to willful ineffectiveness, breaching the client's trust, such as having inappropriate communications with the opposition of the case, and likewise, why would we want that pretend lawyer to learn about our investigative evidence and investigative plans and strategies
Mm-hmm.
for our client's case when our client wouldn't even trust that pretend lawyer to not literally betray our client with using that information against our client, such as tipping off anyone we have under investigation, such as a psychologist
Mm-hmm.
who is expected to conduct a psychological evaluation of our client. Right? We
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
There's no
Right.
there's no interest for us to do that against our client's will.
And
So would you agree? Go ahead.
it's also interesting when an appointed public defender is very concerned with asking if you're recording them and that they're giving their non-consent when
That
they
with that
seem,
latest conversation he had with you, right? That you told me
yeah,
about.
and then here I am sitting in a completely different state, completely jurisdiction that does allow one party consent. And, quite frankly, I didn't feel I had to tell him the honest truth that he was being recorded, because
But
that was
you even did that just out of courtesy, just hoping this person is going to be ethical and respect that you're doing it simply for legitimate reasons. But
right.
instead,
And
he it's like it turns around and stings you like a wasp.
oh, he started to become very unprofessional in his tone, yelled at me in a breakout room during our court session, and wanted to remove himself from my case because he wanted to approach my case a different way than I did and tried to call it a conflict. And so I forced him through the judge to keep him on, but inevitably he still fought it the way he wanted to and caused me to lose the case anyway.
So would you agree that those are very important and practical reasons why it's very important to have a state licensed, legal, highly specialized, namely one with enough integrity not to betray or let down his or her own client, private investigator to help those clients with their CPS cases?
I agree. And many times I asked him to have you involved, and he acted as if he never received those emails. He would not answer yes or no when it was a phone conversation. So he deliberately would avoid these questions.
Thank you, Mrs. B. And so do you, Miss Cynthia B, agree with and identify with these statements I'm making so far?
I absolutely do. And speaking of, violations, I've also noticed throughout my case that my First, Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendment rights have been violated consistently throughout this case. I've also been deliberately lied about in service plan paperwork that I had never seen, that I only got the first set of eyes a day or two before my court case, or before a court session, which
All
claimed
right.
a statements as well about me that were brought into court.
Okay, thank you. And may I ask, going by my actions in this case, such as asking for your permission before accommodating this reckless judge's demands to hand over our state-protected confidential information to someone else, what are your feelings about my level of care, integrity, and protection of my client's case?
I feel that your level was it was very high level. You had no problem letting the judge know that he was speaking out of his jurisdiction. And there were times where he visibly appeared flustered because he realized he had no control over the situation and that inevitably it could come back at him in a civil court case.
Thank you so much, Mrs. B, Cynthia B. That means a lot to me. I mean, thank you. I really do. Thank you. And so the great Judge Bernard Sorry, and I'm sorry, but that is just too fitting for his name.
It really is.
I had to speak with him directly, did I not? And it wasn't very pleasant to see
No,
somebody showing that he's really not in it for justice.
right.
There's some
No,
ulterior thing going on in his workings, but it's not going by the clearly what we're finding, you and I. He's not going by the books here, apparently.
because they
And
know
we're
that
not.
they.
I'm not an attorney. I'm not an attorney, but we're finding evidence that's just
Mhm,
handing that right on the table, right?
right.
Okay, so let me. So he
And we.
literally had the nerve to also order me to not only violate a state statute that holds serious consequences against me if violated, but he then also ordered that and I will quote, not retain a copy of this file, meaning our own investigative file and work product. And
Right.
I'm sure you believe that as from what I mentioned to you, you probably would agree that is completely unlawful from the laws I've mentioned, that it violates of my own professional license.
I
Um,
completely. Right.
Now, this again, I find is clear and convincing evidence of this judge recklessly violating Article 4 of the United States Constitution, the full faith and credit clause, by again willfully ignoring and rejecting actual state statutory laws of another state, which requires me to retain case files for several years for the purpose of, if the state ever needs to become involved, while even then we are still afforded powerful rights to limit their inspection of our case files, as they are designated by statutory law to be 100% confidentially protected, just the same as the attorney-client privilege. That's what we're granted. Well, we got the license. It's not easy to get, but we got it's not as the license, the state license. It affords all these protections.
Mhm.
And the judge, clearly he's not going by the respect of the other states' laws and appreciating those protections that are on the statutory law books. All right, Mrs.
Mhm.
B. Thank
And I
you.
wonder
And if go, mhm.
if his lackadaisical or his attempt at his rulings were because he knows he's retiring in less than 2 weeks.
Exactly, and that's telling to me, to you. I know that's just remarkably telling the way for him to particularly be this reckless at this
Right.
point of time with his future agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. B, thank you. And also, if you recall, another thing that this careless judge stated in that Zoom hearing, that it would be okay for me to work with your new court-appointed attorney. Did he not say that?
Yes, he did. At my
On
attorney's,
the case, right? So long as it's okay with him.
right. And my attorney, as many times as I asked him, would never address that or state that he would allow that, even though many times I expressed that I wanted you to be able to work with him and supply evidence and have it brought into court. He denied that he even received these emails, and I reminded him that an email is a paper trail and that he was in fact lying. The same thing with securing witnesses for my defense, which he never did as well.
All right, thank you. Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you remember the judge making those statements?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. And so let me ask your opinion. How on earth would I be able to work with your new court-appointed attorney if I were to cower down to this judge's unlawful order to not retain a copy of our own case file? I mean, is that not a complete contradiction to
He
having me
and
no longer retain a copy of my own case file than to be expected to continue working with this newly court-appointed attorney?
right, and he even said he wanted you to destroy any other kinds of proof you may have, even though we told him it was digital. Oh well, you have to get rid of it all.
Thank you, Mrs. Cynthia B. I honestly believe that beyond strong evidence of judicial error, you may also agree of that actually testing the boundaries of ludicrous.
Yes, very much so. The demands
And
were very ludicrous. They made no sense, and it goes to show that they're afraid of being caught.
I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So for this point, we are obviously planning to use our investigative findings with our client to seek legal justice against this judge and the CPS department, namely their lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
who should know that the law does not support her ill persuasions to the judge to try to eliminate me from my work and helping my client with her case and with violating rights of due process. So at minimum, having these facts exposed against them, I believe, will in itself be a powerful form of legal justice. Just that one factor alone.
Mm-hmm.
So other parents will not feel they are alone and know there is competent help that will not back down.
Right.
When they are victimized and treated unfairly in the same or similar ways by the same CPS departments and or same or similar judges.
Right.
Okay, Mrs. B, I want to truly thank you and for having this interview with me. And for my work and efforts to help you with this case. What would you honestly tell someone who asked you about that?
I would tell them to absolutely pursue it because there are many rights that are being violated.
No, I'm asking you about my particular helping you with your case. What would you tell someone who asked you? Uh, would you recommend me to help them with their case?
Oh, I would recommend you to help them with their case because you're not going to back down. And you see where laws are clearly being violated with respect to you representing us as clients.
Well,
And
I want to make clear we don't like to use that term because we don't want to insinuate an attorney, but we
attorney,
don't represent the client, but we work harder than heck for the client as investigators, right?
right, to
Okay.
prepare us next step, which
We will
you
represent the evidence we secure.
know,
So there are similarities, and that's what puts us in a very strong position because you're probably aware by now that we can do a whole lot that attorneys can do on these cases, but they
mhm,
won't do.
Right.
They won't do. So that
Right.
the great thing is we do have a great ability, and there's ways, lots of creativity we can share and work on, and directions we can go, and it's you know, the attorney, the client and professional client interaction is what makes these cases successful. And you've been very great to work with. You're highly know a lot about what's going on in the case, and you've been very organized. You've helped move the whole process along very well. And I want to thank
Right.
you for being very great to work with.
Thank you. And likewise with you as well, because to your point, your team is able to address and represent the findings that you show, which usually it's to show a parent's, even whether it's missteppings or they're breaking the law in their own way, when there are truly innocent parents being manipulated and used by the system, which is a crime in itself as well. And when you have people like public defenders who are clearly hired by their counties, and their sole job is to get families, get children back. Well, that also means manipulating parents to be compliant within the system so that they're still working with DCFS instead of truly trying to show a parent's innocence as a public defender. And that was the cross between me and my public defender, and why he tried to remove himself from my case in the middle of a court proceeding, because he knew I wanted to fight for my innocence as well. And that wasn't his agenda. He's there to help keep the money flowing.
Well, I totally understand that, and I'm glad you bringing these things to light. But I want to thank you for being my client.
Thank you.
And thank you for letting me work with you on this case, and to be a team with you on this case.
Absolutely. Thank you as well.
And we are going to be continuing forward as well. So.
Oh yeah.
So I
yes.
thank you, and this will. I really appreciate you for taking the time for this interview, and for your kind, honest statements that you've given.
Thank you very much for having me as well. I'm happy
All
to
right,
help.
so I will conclude. I'm going to press this button and conclude the interview, but we can continue on speaking after this. Okay.
Okay.